צהריים טובים, good afternoon. So with me is Frédéric Journet, l'ambassadeur de France en Israël, French ambassador to Israel. Thank you for joining us. And my first question is, there are still French citizens hostages in Gaza. What is France doing to bring them home?
Thank you, Noah. Actually, France had 48 of its citizens, dual citizens, who died on October 7 in the coming days. I think we are the country with the highest number of dual national among the victims of October 7. There are still two French citizens kept hostages, Ofer Calderon and Ohade Alomi. What we're doing for them specifically is first that in each and every call we are having at a high level, be it minister, prime minister with the president, we insist on them and insist on the fact that the only way to have them out is by a ceasefire with the release of all hostages. And we are telling very bluntly that we do not believe that we are in a moment where additional military pressure is helping their release. To the opposite, it has become very clear that as your military forces are getting closer to the commands of Hamas, the new policy of Hamas is to execute, assassinate the hostages. So the ceasefire is necessary to have them out. It's also about keeping contact with their families, with the forum of hostages. It's also about not deserting the moral ground, and that is very important. We probably did more than you know about that. One of the things is, for instance, France is one of the few countries where we have opened inquiries by French judges regarding the 7th of October massacre and the hostage situation, because our judges are competent to decide on crimes committed against French citizens abroad. So the General Procurator against Terrorism came to Israel. Inquiries are open for both hostage and deceased. This is also about keeping remembrance. And I must say, I was quite proud of what we did in that field. We are the only country where there was a mass demonstration against anti-Semitism and about the situation of the victims and the hostages. The president wasn't there, but the government was there, all of them. Parliament was there. Some people told me why the president wasn't there. I said, well, no other president went to any demonstration, no ministers did. We did that. We did a huge ceremony on February 7th, so we keep that alive. I do it for myself. I have offers on the Haaretz picture on the gate at the embassy. When I arrive every morning, I see them. And I never remember having a moment of emotion which is stronger than when I'm discussing with their wife, sisters, and children.
Thank you. France is historically heavily involved in Lebanon and also with some connections to Hezbollah, and with the current escalation in these recent days also in Israel's northern border. I see the Americans are sending Amos Hochstein, and what is France doing on that front to de-escalate this situation in the north?
First, I will explain to you why we are so committed to that, and I will come to your question exactly of how we're doing it. Why is it important? First of all, because we have long historical interest there. We have 25,000 citizens living in Lebanon, business, cultural ties. It's a country where French is still spoken a lot. And many Lebanese people have their families in France as well, or a house. So it is dear to us. Actually, I did my first diplomatic training in 1996 in Lebanon as an intern. And it is an important country to us emotionally. But beyond that, it is important because we believe very deeply that if a war starts full scale with Lebanon, it is going to be extremely dangerous for the region. It can turn this whole thing into a regional conflict. And we already have a regional conflict in Ukraine. If we have a second one in the Middle East, and sometimes another one starts in East Asia, it starts to look like a world war, which is something we cannot afford. So this is going against our direct national interests. And also because we believe it is bad for Israel. We see that there is a war in Gaza, and as Churchill used to say, there is no such thing as a smooth war. It's a hard war. It's not short. If Israel has to engage into a large scale in the north, it's going to be far worse. It's going to be costly. There's going to be damages. There's been a team in Reichmann who did a fabulous description of that. So what we do, we talk with everybody in Lebanon. That's our advantage. We talk to the bad guys. We talk to the very bad guys. We talk with Hezbollah, either through intelligence or through administrative channels. So we can convey messages. We're telling them very clearly what are the risks. But we're telling in the same way to our Israeli friends how we see that coming. What is important in our current efforts, and I believe our American friends see pretty much the same thing. Nobody wants that war. Iran doesn't want it, Hezbollah doesn't want it, Israel doesn't want it. And yet it's very possible that it happens, even though everybody more or less agrees on the parameters. Everybody knows it's going to be around 1701, withdrawal of Radwan, withdrawal of the anti-tank guided missiles. That's the parameters. Nobody is saying over my dead body. The huge thing, which has been blocking everything, which is limiting our efforts, which is limiting American efforts, is that will not happen unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza. Why? Because Hezbollah sees itself as the so-called axis of resistance. If they accept to have a separate settlement with Israel while the war is ongoing in Gaza, it means they abandon Hamas. If they do that, they are not anymore the axis of resistance. Plus, if they do that, they admit that they are afraid. And they keep saying and they keep showing that they are not. So that's a difficult thing. It's a negotiation, an arrangement that has to be found among partners who are not afraid of each other. And that's one of the very big things. I hear many mistakes in some meetings I have saying they are deterred, they are afraid. They are not. They are very determined to go ahead. When we're telling them, you don't realize Israel is capable of inflicting enormous destruction. The answer is, really? What are they going to destroy? A sewage station that doesn't work anymore? An electricity plant that's been out of order for 7 months? Everybody's using gasoline generators in their backyard in Beirut because the country has collapsed. Said, so what? They will hit that, they will destroy broken things. If we hit something on Israel, we do real damage. We're not afraid. And so that's why, again, the ceasefire is a step. Pardon?
They feel they have nothing to lose.
No, they have some things to lose. Yeah. However, it doesn't mean they're going to back down. There's a difference between having something to lose and being willing to give up a fight. They've been carrying out that fight for 2 decades. They will not stop like that. And what we need to work on right now is to have a ceasefire in Gaza, and when that ceasefire is done, there is a moment where something can be reached. How long it will last? Well, that will be up to the actors to decide. But Hezbollah has no interest in the destruction of Lebanon, and the Lebanese people have no interest in letting Hezbollah engage into a new war to destroy their country. So yes, it is workable, but I insist, it's not going detached from the Gaza ceasefire. And if it's not, what does it mean? It means a second war in the north, a war of attrition, a long-lasting, painful war, something Israel has always avoided. And meanwhile, we're missing the real problem, the elephant in the room, Iran. The ceasefire in Gaza, that means finding a settlement with Lebanon, pivoting the strategic attention to Iran.
So you're saying that Iran and in Iran and in Lebanon, all the officials that France has been in touch with, they all say first ceasefire in Gaza. That's the number one condition.
It's unthinkable to them to detach the two things. We we are all aware, and there is sort of agreement among Western powers, that Iran was not informed of what would happen on the morning of October 7. They had helped Hamas acquire all of those methods. Lots of things that we've seen in the murderous, barbaric practices of Hamas on October 7 are things which Iran and Hezbollah learned while fighting against Daesh in Syria. So yes, they had trained them, organized them. You've seen the similarity between Radwan and the Hamas militias. But they were not aware. Nevertheless, on October 7, you have an attack of Hamas against Israel. On October 8, you have all the proxies of Iran who starts to be activated. And that didn't come as a surprise. So yes, there is a real player acting against Israel, but beyond that, acting against the West. Iran's interest doesn't limit to Israel. They hate Israel. They say Israel shall be destroyed. They don't say they will destroy it themselves.
Right. You know, this is quite similar to what the Israeli government is saying overall. I know that France has been quite supportive of the Israeli stance since October. But there's also criticism. There's criticism of what's happening in Gaza.
Yes, look, when you are a friend, you must be able to tell the truth. One of my bosses in my early diplomatic life told once in front of me, I always remembered, diplomacy is not about soothing the ears of your interlocutors with words they want to hear. It's about telling them the truth with words they will listen to.
So what truth are you telling your Israeli friends, and is there anyone who's even listening?
First, there are people that will listen. It's not that they will agree, but they will listen. We are telling them, first, that they had a right, and Israel has a right of self-defense. That's according to the UN Charter. Now, how you carry on a war in self-defense has consequences. The problem of the war in Gaza is that Israel had to engage to it extremely quickly on October 7 or October 8. Unprepared, it wasn't seen as the imminent danger, without a clear plan, and being frightened of going underground, which involved massive destruction of the surface. The result, seen from outside, has been terrifying in terms of destruction and casualties. And it's providing a constant loop on the media, on social media, feeding into our public opinion, disastrous to Israel. We've been engaged into 3 wars against terrorism. We've been in Afghanistan, I served there. We've been in Mali, we've been fighting Daesh in Iraq and Syria. We failed in Afghanistan and ultimately in Mali, because it was too long, too protracted. We succeeded against Daesh, but we planned during 2 years. Yes, my Israeli friends tell me, yeah, it was thousands of kilometers away, but we waited for 2 years, we planned, we found allies, we found a proxy of our own on which we could ponder. Meanwhile, we still had the Daesh-inspired terrorist attack of Nice. That was heavy, but then we did it and we won. We managed to make it quick, to withdraw with an acceptable gain. What we're telling to our Israeli friends is that actually the level of destruction of Hamas capabilities is high enough. It's good to cut your win, say this is enough, go to the day after phase, negotiate the settlement with the North, and then pivot the interest of Israel's friends at Iran. Because if you don't do that, what happens? A long war in the North, and meanwhile everybody is distracted, and Iran goes on with its nuclear program. Exactly what we don't want. And at the end, you find Israel and the Israeli people, the Israeli army, tired of a long, protracted war, as we have been in Mali, and an enemy that has become very powerful. That's what we want to avoid.
Unfortunately, our time's up, but thank you so much for being here, and thank you also for your efforts with the hostages and the de-escalation.
Thank you very much.
מרסי, פרדריק ז'ורנס ולנועה לנדאו. אני מזמינה כעת פרופסור תמר הוסטובסקי ברנדז מהקריה האקדמית אונו ומכון על מחשבה ישראלית. בבקשה.